curious of how you guys are like the old puzzles back when you say you got the D&D background. We had to think about things. My DM didn't tell me, man, if you literally pick up the cup, your answer's in the cup. And you may go right past it, go in there, and end up pretty beat up, or somebody might die and go through this big, long adventure, which it eventually made the adventure, but it all comes back to the puzzles and not giving everyone kind of like it's almost like a planned path. I know there's going to be some things that are planned, but the lights coming from the sky really kill me. And that went back to when you said Thoughtbot. The Thoughtbot thing really drove me crazy, because I remember playing some of the simplest games back in the day that would eat up a lot of my time. And once I finally figured out the puzzle, or where to go, or where the right person to talk to, when I finally figured it out, I was like, man, it was there in front of me the whole time. But it made it that more memorable to me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. All right. Fair warning. This might be a really long answer, because I mean, you've tapped into, and just jump in and comment while I'm talking. Don't feel like you have to wait for me to finish, because you touched on some things that are like sacred cows for me, and things that I utterly despise about so many games nowadays, and things I miss. And okay, so that was your warning. Okay, so first of all, like the guiding light, like everything, the natural extension of Thoughtbot was these little quest add-ons that literally you just follow a frickin' arrow and go, and they figure out the efficient path for your quests that you've loaded up on. Like, I know why WoW, they wanted to, like, gate content and stuff, so you'd go to a hub and load up on quests and do the quests, and then it would move you to the next hub, and la-di-da. We're not going to have anything like that. I don't believe in that style of questing whatsoever. I've written articles about how much I hate it. I don't, to the extent that we're going to have quests even, well, what we normally have, we don't even call them quests, because first of all, the term quest used to actually mean something pretty damn epic. Like getting the Holy Grail was a quest. Those were the quest nights of King Arthur. You know what I mean? Like, that was an epic quest. Nowadays, a quest is like, what? Getting some freaking boar livers? I mean, that's pathetic. So, to the extent that we have anything like that, they're just tasks. Like, an NPC, a Taskmaster NPC, is just in a hub, and he's like, hey, every time you bring me, 20 spider eyes, you're going to get some basic reward. And that stuff like that, we have those because there are some people who, they don't want fully open-ended experience. They want to have a very directed experience where, like, okay, if I'm in a dungeon, I want to be there for a reason, because I'm getting spider eyes and, lizard guts and, orc hearts, or we don't have orcs, but, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So we didn't want to fully alienate those people. But for the most part, like, you're always advancing. If you're running around the world, exploring dungeons and killing stuff, you're advancing. You're earning XP. It's not, everything's pointless unless you have a quest. Like, I hate how games have gotten to the point where you're exploring the world and you run into, like, Grocknard, the Uber Troll, but, I better not fight him because I don't have the quest. So if I kill him without the quest, it's a waste. You know what I mean? Like, I almost F-bombed. That's an F'd up mentality. You know what I mean? Like, that's just horrible. You get so excited. In the old days, you get pumped. You're wandering around a forest, and all of a sudden there's this huge thing, and you're like, oh my god. And then you and your party, you kill this thing, and you're so excited. And then, like, there's no loot because you didn't have the quest. Well, that's horrible. Like, there's no excuse for that. So, I don't believe in, to the extent that we will have quests, they will be heavy story-based things where there's, they could take an enormous amount of time. They could take weeks or months. There'd be all kinds of stuff that would unravel. To the extent that we have quests, it'll be stuff like that. To the extent that we have WoW-style quests, it'll be those Taskmaster NPCs that you can choose to load up on or not, and that you'll complete those just at the same time that you do everything else. But really, playing the game is just exploring, running around the world, looking for things that look interesting, and then going in. And then popping into that cave, and hey, what's in here? And then whatever happens in there is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, what happens in the mine stays in the mine. And there'll be cool things in there. We'll definitely, especially the handcrafted ones, we'll have, cool, aka annoying tricks and traps and little puzzles, and if you map it on graph paper, it might spell something out, and then that's a hint to go here and do something and unlock, like games like Might and Magic and Bard's Tale, other games that we played and loved that are an inspiration, that kind of thing. But you know what? If you miss them, it's not the end of the world either, because, we're not having super crazy, ridiculously rare items, and it's like, oh, you didn't figure this out, so you didn't get that quest item, so you suck. No, you can just fight and kill stuff and get loot, and you'll be fine. So that way your focus is on doing stuff that you think is fun, and also setting your own goals, because no matter what goals you set as a developer, the goals that players set for themselves are always a million times more exciting. When you decided to yourself that you were going to do some random thing, that's just no, I nerfed myself. That's just a million times cooler. You know what I mean? Like, the quest, well, that was nice, and I got some item, but, when I decided, hey, I am going to, like, I used to love how you could break a camp. You know what I mean? Like in like Dayak or older MMOs, like you could break the spawn. And so my wife and I would play, and we'd, especially if we had a whole group, and we would see if we could get to the point where we could kill that camp so fast that we could break the spawn and then run in there and just run around. You know what I mean? Like, it had no purpose except for something silly that we set for ourselves. But that was awesome, because once we broke the spawn enough that we could run around in the camp, it was like we've totally vanquished you, And so I thought that stuff like that you can set for yourself. So, and also it kind of gets back to the trash mob thing. Like, since only killing a boss with a quest is meaningful, trash mobs are useless, so the XP they earn feels meaningless. It all kind of cascades from that. So, but for us, any mob is going to have XP that's valuable. Any mob can drop, even if they drop just junk, you can have it in your junk trunk, and everybody wants that because that's the fuel. Or they drop items that you can break down. So I like to think that the way we design games, every single piece of the game is interwoven to so many other things that inherently makes them meaningful. Like I said, any mob is worth killing, because at the very minimum, he's going to drop junk, and that junk could be valuable to the most powerful player on the server because he wants his outpost to be super powerful. You know what I mean? So the lowliest guy killing the most pathetic kobold getting junk is in some way potentially valuable to the most powerful guy on the server. And when you have that relationship, infinite possibilities.
It brings the community together in such a different way. It brings everyone together with that type of system, and I'm totally digging it. And when you go back, the whole help me guiding light thing, I remember having that handwritten journal, that you would like, oh man, I got to bring back the black oil of Kaladar to this guy. I remember seeing that somewhere, and there's nowhere in the game that told you. Again, it's just you randomly went to this NPC, you spoke to him, and he just mentioned it. You're like, oh, man, I remember that, but I didn't pick it up. It was at a shop across the world. I can't remember where it was at. You would write it down, and it wasn't, it could be an in-game journal even, but, just that thing of having the journal and having the puzzles and figuring it out. Man, it was just taken away nowadays, and it just drives me absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, and I think here's what I think happened. First of all, the more you talk to me, I have a theory on almost everything. So here's what I think happened, a couple of different things. First of all, the things that you get from quests became so uniquely awesome that if you ever forgot to do one, you were screwed. So the stakes became really high. So the stakes got really high on top of everything, which meant you couldn't afford to just play and jot down your own notes and remember the right things, because it's like you're sitting there knowing, man, I've only written these notes down, but the sort of ultimate uberness that's 100 times better than what I have, somebody else has because they followed the guide. You know what I mean? And so once people realized the stakes were that high, that completely killed any ability to play in a spontaneous way, because you're sitting there knowing, either consciously or subconsciously, every moment I play, I am screwing myself because I am not following the guide. And as soon as people have switched into that mentality, you're done. There's absolutely no way to just play the game, to just watch the game and participate in the game, because it's just the opportunity cost is just too high, and so I think that's a big thing that really killed it. It's kind of like how and this gets back to something I always say, like, convenience is not always a good. Like, players, even in Threshold, they will something, hey, can you add this feature because it'll be more convenient? Can you add this because it'll be more convenient? Like, convenience is not always a good. In some ways it is, but not always. Just like regeneration. Like, you may have to or not idle, but you may have to wait a few minutes after a battle to heal up. Now, a lot of people nowadays are like, whoa, I don't want to just sit there healing. That sucks. But, back in the day, Dayak, EverQuest, when people were healing, they were talking. Because they're like, well, I'm just healing anyway. Yeah, so they're talking. But now,
remember, enhance your comm. Purity.
Yep. Heck yeah.
That was all about enhancing your comm, man. Yeah, you got me sold big time, man.
I mean, yeah, that's because now to talk to someone now is like time is money. Like, it's like, hey, I finished my battle. 10 seconds later, I'm fully healed. If I stop to talk to somebody, well, that's a mob I could have been killing. But if you're regenning anyway, well, now talking has no cost. It only has a gain. And then on top of that, you get to the point where, you guys probably remember this, like, you wanted to have friends that you could chat with, because you're like, man, I hope that there's some cool people online to chat with so I can chat with them while I'm healing. You actually think that, you know what I mean? Like, and you'd want to have friends on to chat. You'd want to have clanmates to chat with. But in the modern MMO, well, people chatting with you is an annoyance. It's like a hindrance.
Oh,
like,
man. The socialism from back in the day and today is so different. I mean, even with instancing, I think instancing can be done right, but also can be done wrong as well. Some games have been plagued with too much, and it goes back to that mentality of solo gameplay or just a few people. But there's also a balance of, man, maybe that's the way people want to play. So you got to give them the opportunity. So there's definitely a balance, and it's hard to bring in all of those things into one game. And what I always tell people is, the game that's going to be perfect for me to play is going to be the game that appeals to everybody. The PvPer, the crafter, the miner, the explorer, anything. That's the game that's probably going to be the one that I'm going to play. Doesn't have to be hardcore PvP for me.
right. Who was it that was the Dayak, the Midgard Dayak player?
It's Torpid.
Okay, Torpid. So I got a perfect example of that. Do you remember Spindle Hala, that dungeon? I mean, for me and for my wife, that we consider that one of the examples of what was so awesome about early MMOs and what is so lost. Like, for anyone listening, like, so Spindle Hala, you'd go into this dungeon. It was a kind of a sort of an in-game dungeon. I think you would around level 44 or so, you go in there, and level 50 was the cap. And at level 44, by yourself, maybe you could fight the kobolds that were at the top. But if a buddy showed up and was like, hey, you want to party? You're like, cool. Okay, now you can go a little further in and fight, like, the snakes also. And then another friend comes, now you got a healer, you can move in further, and now you can fight the crabs, and then you're farming crabs for a while, and you're like, oh, sweet. And then another couple friends come in, and now you go a little deeper, and you can fight, like, the Iraq something, I can't remember what they were called. And if you got a full group, you could go all the way to the bottom and fight the Trows or the Trows or whatever. But then if someone left, you'd be like, okay, we have to pull back a little bit. But on top of that, if you screwed up the pull and pulled too many, there was actually a chance in hell you could yell for help, and a party that's working at a little section a little further down the dungeon might actually be able to run in and save your ass. So there was cool stuff like that. There was incredibly powerful social mechanics. Like, you could go and Spindle Hala and just log off there and log back on the next day and find people, and it was so organic the way you could move up and down in the dungeon and stuff like that, and it was just so awesome, and an experience that I feel bad for MMO players now. They don't have any idea how freaking fun that was, even though it's the same 10 types of mobs you're killing, but it changes so much based on the circumstances of who's in your party.
Just the rush to max level nowadays, I remember enjoying from the day I made my Dwarf Thane, got to level 35, took me forever, because I didn't know a bunch of people. There was a social aspect. It went slow, and then I finally figured out, this is for me. So I went back and I made a Scald, and that's the one I ended up